One of the topics that I wanted to discuss today, this keeps coming up from time to time. We keep seeing these celebrities, these high-profile individuals, these government elite people walking around with what appears to be black eyes. They're either, like they've been hit in the face. And as I mentioned at the top of the program, everyone sees someone with a black eye from time to time, whether it's somebody that's been in a fight, somebody's had an accident, they've walked into a door. That's happened to me. And then of course we have situations of abuse where a husband will beat his wife, or could even be vice versa, or something along that line. But we have what appears to be some sort of a ritual going on here, where these famous people are all of a sudden getting these black eyes, or showing up with black eyes for no reason, and yet there is an alleged connection to some nefarious thing going on here with it. And I was wondering if you could, I think we've talked about this in the past, but it's been a while, kind of expound on this a little bit. What is the Black Eye Club?
Yeah, the Black Eye Club. Well, it is tied specifically to a ritual. It also, what we see happening is the reoccurrence, because it's meant to be a sign and a warning and a symbol within the brotherhood religion. And, I use that term because really, the brotherhood system is a religion. And, who's their God? Who do they worship? It's Lucifer. So within this system, you have many, they try to hide their true name. They created societies, different, groups, orders that they're connected to. So they'll have a million orders, and this is partly how they get away with the lie, and people don't understand the vastness of the system because it's broken into so many pieces. And each of those pieces purposely look different so that you don't know that they're really interconnected. So at the base level of let's just say, it's a person who's born into this system, as they, age and grow, and the system has chosen that this is going to be an individual who is an asset. They're going to invest in this person as somebody who will, be chosen for a specific position, and that position will ensure that the system continues to run. So as they do this, as the child gets older, they will start to draw that child into the different Masonic orders. And they start where they go through the first 3 levels. And by that time, they're a Master Mason. Well, after they're a Master Mason, and at these lower levels, people who are coming into it from outside of the system, they would think that these are good Christian men, that, that the things that they're going to reflect on in those orders is going to be out of Scripture. It's going to be, Bible passages. So, they're fully going to believe this is a Christian connection group. And so they'll go through that, and then, once they're a Master Mason, then they get to start getting into some of these specialty orders. So that's where they would choose, if they're more drawn to the esoterical, then they may get involved with the Rosicrucians, or some of those orders, the Order of Bath, or the Order of the Gators. There's just so many orders. It could be the Order of the Thistle. I can't even, name them all, think of them all right now, but they'll choose their order. Those are the esoterical ones. Golden Dawn would be in there as well. The Order of the Phoenix, all of those are going to be more esoterical. If it's more, Bible-based, or, they're more drawn to the religious aspects, they may then focus more on like the Jesuit orders. They may enroll with the Franciscan monks, or choose to be more involved with, what would be under the Vatican's jurisdiction. So then they begin to specialize in these orders, and they'll advance in degrees in these orders, and they can have as many as they want, and they'll focus on which ones they're going to advance. Then once they get to a certain level, they're going to be brought in where they'll go through a certain ritual that is always set up the same way. You'll have what is considered in the Masonic room. You will have what's considered the sacred circle or space. And usually it's kind of outlined as a square or a circle.
Okay.
Within that space, they'll put the 3 great lights. So you'll see like an easel with a book, and then you'll have a compass, the Masonic compass, within that space as well. Those are considered the 3 great lights. So for this ritual, they literally will take their vow, they will place their eye upon that book, and they will say the words that if they break the secrets of this order or of their brothers in the order, that it will come at the cost of their eye. And there's something spiritually supernatural that happens at that point, where then they are left with a black eye for a week or 2. And that is a sign and symbol to everybody who has been through that ritual. They know what that means, that, they're reminded, hey, if you break the secrets of the order, it's going to come at the cost of your eye. So that's part of it. Some groups will, people have been putting out information that sometimes it has to do with adrenochrome. There are some groups that will inject amounts of adreno in that spot to cause that eye.
Below your left eye.
Yeah, and again,
Mostly it's the left eye, but I heard sometimes it's on the right too.
Right. And again, it's a reminder, if they're participating in those things, that, it's about the vow of silence, that they've taken that vow of silence. They don't reveal anything that happens or goes on in the system. So, that's why you'll see throughout the years different individuals who will, they kind of cycle within the circles, who has the black eye as the reminder. And it's not a person who picks that. You just show up at these meetings and these rituals, and whatever spirit or principality is heading that up, they will choose somebody out of that circle to come up and put their eye in that book and, do that reminder vow. And when you're doing that, you don't know if you're really going to lose your eye or not. There's that sense of fear because you're called up and you don't know if that spirit with a vengeance is going to take your eye and if you're going to walk away with your sight or not. So it's not like a, laid back type, oh, I just get to wear the black eye this week deal. There's a lot of fear and uncertainty involved with that.
Is there ever a situation in which this particular black eye or whatever is achieved due to a task completed, such as the raping and torturing and killing of a child and the extraction of adrenochrome, and they're given that as a symbol of you accomplished this particular goal, now you're one of us? It's a rite of passage or anything along that line?
It can be due to that as well. The sodomy, we know that with the children at the young age, when they're sodomized, it causes what they call the panda eyes.
Yes.
Because the pressure will break the blood vessels around the eyes. So sometimes they do wear that as a sign that they have taken that step, and that they have had a certain number of victims, or it could be, usually they do that with their first sodomy case. But with that, you got to remember, it happens like for those who are in the system, they take that first step of becoming the perpetrator or the one who's doing the sodomizing at age 12. You know, when they go through that blasphemy ritual for their 12-year-old initiation. So those who are not born into the system then do it in their adult years. But for those in the system, that initial act comes at age 12.
How many people are born into the system or raised in it, as opposed, like, what is the percentage of those born into it as opposed to those who come into the system as an adult, who get lured into it or, you know, commit to it, you know, in their adult lives?
I would say it depends on the level. For higher level individuals, you know, you're looking at more of a ratio where 90% or more are going to be born in. You know, only those born in get the top secrets and know how things run. At the lower levels, then it switches where, you know, their contact with actual bloodline hierarchy people is going to be minimized. You know, they go through, you'd have people who really know nothing about the system. They may sometime in their life get to meet somebody who's a high priest or priestess, but they're usually never going to get the opportunity to interact with, you know, somebody who's of the Satanic Council or one of the hidden elites. You know, the majority of them aren't even going to really know their high priest. You know, most of the Masonic levels, you know, Master Masons, the person that they directly interface with is the illustrious leader. And that person is the person who has contact with the regent, high priests, or priestesses. So, you know, they may get to meet those high priests or priestesses, but interaction is going to be kept to a minimal.
Fascinating, fascinating. Have you ever seen, you know, someone that you could say for sure immediately? In other words, are you able to tell if someone that's seen in public that is a famous figure with a black eye is automatically part of the system, as opposed to someone who might have just achieved this by accident? I mean, is there a distinction?
Absolutely. You know, I'd go back, if you see somebody who has a black eye who's famous, one of the best ways you can find out is to go back through magazine covers. And, you know, if they're on the Vogue, particularly, or the mainstream news cover or magazine covers, and they're doing any signs, symbols that are Masonic, you know, my guess is that most likely that they are part of that system. You know,
I'm looking at some names here and some photographs of people. Mitt Romney had a black eye. Jimmy Carter, Bernie Sanders, George Bush Jr. You know, W. Bush.
right.
Harry
We can
Reid.
also say, you know, I mean, think of connections as well, you know, with some of those people. Always ask, can you tie them back to Chicago? If you can tie them back to Chicago strongly, chances are they're in the system. You know, so several of those people you named are part of the what I call the Northern Boys, which are, you know, they play the goody two-shoe Christians or,
Yeah.
you know, religious people, but they're out of the states of Wisconsin, Minnesota, Indianapolis, Chicago areas. So a lot of those goody two-shoe political guys who claim to be Christian, you know, are connected to the Northern Quadrant circles.
Yeah, it's amazing some of the people. Lady Gaga, and that doesn't surprise me. Richard Branson, Robert Downey Jr. Now, you mentioned earlier Kanye West. Kanye West allegedly went through some sort of a transformation. He became a Christian all of a sudden. Is that real, or was that an act?
I've asked him to come forward and, tell me if it's really real, but I think I've proven that it's not. We know that the woman that he's married to, Kim Kardashian, their family are, come from a line of high priestesses. And, that's who he married into. They're into a lot of dark magic and everything. But with him, some of the indicators are, first, he's changed his name. He started calling himself Yi,
Right.
which that breakdown it's one of the breakdowns of the Hebrew names for God. So
Right.
basically he's proclaiming himself as God. His wedding ceremony, was part of the Phoenix ceremony, that as the dark side of the system fell, the Phoenix's job is to raise up the light side of the system. So when he set himself on fire, it was a very specific ritual. I've even broken it down. We're going to do more on it, but you can look into the chemical wedding. You can also look into the initiates of the flame. And when you start to study the immortal stone, that's one of the things that they proclaim, is that these alchemists, that, it wasn't that they're making gold outside of themselves. What is the gold? We are. Our bodies, that limitless energy is the gold. And what happens when we're transformed into our immortal form or body? We shine with the glory of God, which appears as gold or fire. So, that's what they're really talking about and referring to. So these rituals, these things that he's doing, are signs for this. And then, we see him in the next thing. He's praying with Marilyn Manson and Bieber. Come on now,
Yeah.
I mean, if Marilyn Manson came to Christ, the spiritual warfare alone for that man, because of the depths he's been involved in, is going to be so horrendous that there's no way he's coming out and not, like, adamantly proclaiming, Jesus Christ saved me, delivered me. We don't see that happening. He's not saying those type of things, So it sounds good on the outside, but in those Right on Radio episodes, we break down even that prayer thing and show how it's a ritual. I mean, they are wearing white, which is those robes are only worn during marriage vows or ceremonies in the system. And they're wearing rubber boots on a day when it's not raining. Why are they wearing the rubber boots? Because they got to ground themselves, because they're creating energy and electricity and doing a ritual.